Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's show. In today's show, we have a special guest for you, a returning guest for you, David Jurasek, who is he's multi-dimensional. He's a grateful husband, proud father, humble sensei, seasoned family therapist, and a relentless mentor of men. He is on fire about helping women understand their boys and men and to guide men to evolve from an individualistic to embodying a relational paradigm. Welcome to the show, David. It's great to have you back again.
Wow, it's so wonderful to be back. And wow, your intro just like blows me away. Who is this guy?
You.
Me? Oh my God. I think the way you summarized it was like exactly, yeah, that's my life. Wow.
Well,
Yeah.
it's awesome to have you back. I mean, last time, for our listeners that haven't heard from you yet, we did an episode with David last year. It's episode number 94, so go and check that out in case I forget to tell you again at some point in this interview. And it was all about how to honor relationships even when it's stressful. It was a very powerful conversation. We got loads of good feedback off of it. We spoke about the 5 saboteurs of relationships, the barriers to healthy relationships, what to do when your own stress is overspilling into your relationships, and so much more. So we're very, very excited to have you back.
Wow. Yeah. I think, we keep evolving, right? Even a year goes by and we're like, wow, the work we do and the way we understand health and ourselves, our families, at least for me, it keeps evolving.
Yeah.
And in the last year of this pandemic kind of coming to hopefully to an end, there's just been so much focus for me in working with so many different men and families and couples to focus on the transformative elements. And that's why I love your work, because your work talks about all of these different facets of health, not just like a silver bullet here or there, right?
Yeah.
And I've been really just dazzled and amazed to see what are all the elements it takes for a couple to thrive, especially for men, because men tend to be under-resourced in our world, even if we have more privileges at times, depending on the man, of course, but they tend to be under-resourced, more isolated, more unaware of what's out there, whereas women tend to be, I think, culturated to like seek and look for allies and resources. Men tend to just kind of go as lone wolves, right?
It's very true.
I made it my mission to try to reach more men in a way that was friendly, that wasn't like preachy. And so I wrote a novel. And what was really fun about it is I didn't want to write a novel like a regular story where there's like a hero and he's like, oh, bad stuff happens, and then he finds all that he needs within himself, this lone hero, right? Which is most of the masculine stories, is the lone hero. I think that works when you're in your 20s. But when you get to 30, 40, well, I went through cancer a few years ago. When you go through real life and you have a family, a wife, a daughter, and people who count on you, you cannot do that. That doesn't work. Carl Jung said, what was true in the morning of my life becomes a lie in the afternoon. And so the story is really about a guy who everything falls apart, his marriage, his health, his career, all on one Monday morning. It comes to a head for him. He has a heart attack, and really over 7 days, what's transformative is all the people he encounters in his life who introduce him to different facets of being a human being, a full, living, thriving human, and how that changes him, and how all of these people in the story are based on real people in my life.
This is what I was going to ask you. I want to know, is it about you? Is it
oh
just
my
like,
God. Yeah. And I'm giving it to these people in my life and they're reading it. This is amazing. I love your story. Oh my God, I cried like 10 times. And I'm like, did you know that character is based on you? Like, I had a feeling it might be. And I was like, yes, that massage therapist and that sensei and that, that sister-in-law, that's you, right? And they're always like, it's my way of honoring people in my life and honoring that it takes a village to thrive. It really does. Nobody can do it in isolation, even with the knowledge and the resource. We can't do it. We need each other more than ever as the world keeps warming up and crazy stuff is happening, we need to be in community. And so it was a real thrill. And just last night, I was staying up late because a friend of mine was calling me and saying, I got to talk to you about your book. Oh my God. And I was like, okay, that's wonderful. I got to get to sleep. I'm meeting these wonderful guys at 6:30 in the morning. I was like, oh my God.
But yeah, what quick one? So we're going to go delve deeper
Yeah.
into your book and kind of the
Yeah.
message behind everything that's kind of going on. But what inspired you to write that book in the first place?
I put I don't know if this sounds kind of woo-woo to you guys, but I put a request to the universe. I said, if I'm going to, because I know writing a book is a marathon. Whoever does it, it's like, bless you, because it's to do it well. It takes years of your life, right? And it's not like a weekend or a month or two thing. You have to go back and revise and dig and dig. And I said to the universe one night, I said, I will give up all creative control, all my ego, my pride, if you give me a story that moves me, that breaks my heart open. And then I left it for a few weeks. And then at like 2 a.m, I just woke up and I had this idea of this guy, Bill, who was actually a client that I was working with at the time. And then it kept waking me up at like 3, 4, 5 in the morning. I was like, God, come on, this is annoying. I'm trying to sleep. But it was kind of like that. I made a pact, I want to write a story that moves me, that as I'm writing it, I don't know where it's taking me, and it's taking me to all the places I need to go. I think stories are very powerful.
Absolutely.
That's for thousands of years. It's how we try to make sense of all that's happening to us in our lives. And
so, David, why now? Why did you ask the universe at that moment in time for this sign, for this gift, essentially? Why now?
I think there's probably like many reasons. One is I wanted to honor people in my life. That's become really important to me, as a lot of my mentors are getting older and older. Some of them are in their 70s and 80s, and I know they don't have infinite time. How do I honor them? The profound impact that they've made on my life. There was also I just wanted to, we live in a culture these days where we take in so much news or stories. The TV is great, but it's so many stories. And I find most of it is not very nourishing. It's not very transformative. It's not really actually helpful. It's just telling me something bad is happening, or this is a clever story that keeps me staying up late to watch. But it's once in a while I read a story or watch something and I go, wow, this is moving. This is transformative. This has some wisdom in it. I want more of that in my life. I want to contribute to that. And particularly for men, I think I knew the only way I can reach them was if they got hooked into a story that they could say, that's me, that guy. Oh, wow, that's me. And then that guy gets exposed to all these things that they would never even think to look for. In my 20s, I was really lost. There was a point where I was almost suicidal. And I picked up The Peaceful Warrior on a garage sale by Dan Millman. This is written in the 80s. He's one of the first spiritual wellness people who, and it's a novel. And it just captivated me. I read it 3 times. It led me to Aikido, to meditation, to all these good eating well, all these things are in the book, but they're in the story. They're embedded in the story. There's no preaching. There's no shoulding. And I still remember that Dan Millman made a huge impact on my life. I would have never known those things existed unless I picked up that ragged novel. So I wanted to offer that to men at midlife. A lot of them I know are lost. They're working really hard, trying to provide, but they're restless. They're unhappy in some way. So I wanted them to pick up a novel and get lost in it, and then discover something that they would never they would never think, you know.
I love that so much. So is it only for men?
Well, I've had my wife read it, and she's my hardest critic. She cried like 10 times, and she couldn't stop reading. She took 3 days to read it. It's a fat book. It's 450 pages,
Nice.
but I wrote it as a page turner. I have a storytelling background, right? And I think that can be manipulative, you know, when you always leave a hook at the end of every chapter. But this kind of his life is like that. It's accelerated growth. So every chapter leads you to the next adventure. And I wanted every chapter to be satisfying. So something meaningful happens in his relationships. So I've had several women read it, and then they just like, they loved it. And then they pass it on to their partner, which is
I was going to say, is that the idea, right? It's like you get into the women's hands, and then they just start to leave it.
Yeah, this sounds oddly familiar. This is what happened during my kind of my journey of self-realization and self-awareness. Is Charlotte started giving me books. Is I think
you would love
this. Yeah, like, oh, that's interesting. Let me read another. Yeah, so
it's really, really powerful though, I think, when you can relate to something. Just hold the book up again. So for anybody that's obviously watching this, My Heart is a Muscle.
Yeah. This is the pre-sale copy. We're going to launch it in the fall. You can get free ebook copies on the website. I'll tell you about later, but
nice.
Yeah, it's such a joy. My favorite review has been this woman that I know who passed it on to her partner, and she was like, "Oh, he's not into men's work and all this stuff," and they live out like in the country. And he read it, and she kept passing me messages. Oh my God, he's crying. Oh my God, he's having deep, soulful conversations. We never do this. And oh my God, he keeps carrying the book around, telling all his friends, and like, what's in? And she didn't read the book, right? So she was like, "Oh, I need to read your book. Like, what are you telling him?" And now he's giving it to his son, and that was tremendous to me. It was like, oh my God, that was the goal, you know, was to reach men and break their hearts open.
Why is that so important, do you think? Why is it important to reach men and break their hearts open?
Yeah, well, another guy was telling me just yesterday, a lawyer whose marriage is kind of falling apart, but maybe coming together for the first time. You know, that's often the thing with health and our lives. Sometimes they need to break open to reorganize, right? And he was saying, you know, David, I'm 42 and I've lived my whole life in my head. And there's a whole dimension in my body and in my heart. And I never knew that till I started meeting your community and reading your book. And it's like 2/3 of life is in the heart and in the body. And I'm just starting. I feel like just a kid starting to discover this terrain, you know? And I think that's where stories can also be powerful, because that terrain can be scary, right? To always be in your head and then all of a sudden start crying, or to feel rage or fear and not know what those signals actually mean. You can go to therapy and pay a lot of money and someone try to explain it to you. But a story can kind of make sense of it. Go, oh, this is you grieving. Grief is good. Let it flow, you know, and it'll get gentler and easier. And your anger is trying to lead you to a breakthrough, to change something in your life. And your fear is a warning, but it's trying to signal something, you know. It's trying to wake you up. All of that kind of can come through a book or a story. And I think you guys do that with case studies, and you talk about the people you work with. Those stories are really like medicine, you know. People hear it and they don't feel the pressure to buy something. They hear and go, wow, what happens next? How did they do it? Can I do that? Is it possible for me to go through that journey? That's become really evident to me as I pass the book around. I keep getting these wonderful reviews, you know. It's like it really gets past all our defenses. We're so used to being sold these days, right? And it's just a joy to leave that for someone, and they take it in when they're ready, and Yeah.
I already know
Nice.
somebody that I want to give this book to, and it's not John. Obviously, John's
Thank
got to read it now.
Thank
He
you.
absolutely wants to read it now.
I will read it, absolutely, definitely.
But no, earlier this year, I reconnected with a family member. He was going through a tough time. He was going for a breakup, and he's like early 30s, and he was like something's wrong. Like he's just crying all the time, and he's never been that emotional. And like I started chatting to him, I'm like, amazing. I'm like, I'm so happy for you. And he's like, what? And I'm like, and because he was just feeling broken. I'm like, you're not broken. Your heart is cracked open.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Whether this person that they was in a relationship with is meant for him or not.
Yeah.
Look at the beauty that's come from it. And now he is so like compassionate and loving. And he was before, but just in a very different way. And it's so beautiful to see that as well in a family member, just for anybody. And it's deepened our connection, right? And I think it's just such a beautiful thing when our hearts can crack open, because we spend so much time protecting ourselves often, right? And guarding ourselves. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Wow, that's, I love that you were there to bless him and validate him in that way. I think men need women and men in our lives to do that, especially when we're at a threshold, when something starts to break or we hit the wall of our limits, right? We need women to validate it in their own beautiful way. We also need men to say the similar message, but from a man's perspective, that can also be very powerful too, because vulnerability and emotionality tends to be conflated with the feminine. Right? And you hear that all the time. That's the feminine, that's the masculine. And it's also gender conditioning. Boys don't cry. Women, they can do their thing. They're women, right? But we need to hear it from both. From sisters and partners to say, I love your vulnerability. It's a strength. But also from men to say, damn, this is beautiful. You're breaking open. This is great. Keep going. This is a new terrain. David Brooks is a great author and speaker to this. He's like a conservative guy, right? Guy in a suit, very intellectual, and he hit a wall in his midlife, and then he had a TED talk called The Second Mountain, and he talks about that first mountain is the climbing, the masculine, the individuality, proving yourself, and then you get to the top and you're like, it's empty. It's empty. And some men never even get to the top. They're always striving. And he talks about relationality as a second mountain. And it's the rest of the world. It's having feelings, and it's being in community. It's learning with people. It's, and I think that's the beauty of your friend, your family member, is he got to receive that message through you. And I wish for him to also receive that from men, so he understands that that's also a manly thing also. So he doesn't sort of see himself only as like he can be vulnerable with women. It's safe with women. That it's not actually safe with men most of the time. But when you are vulnerable in the men's world, you're a powerful leader, because they're all looking at you like children. They're all like, I don't know how to do that. I'm lost. And you're there going, I'm scared. I'm nervous. I'm worried. I'm angry, and I'm not blowing things up, and I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just real, holding my emotions and feeling them and processing them. That leads to wisdom. And people instinctively know that. There was an article a few years ago about how hundreds of years ago, in like time of Abraham Lincoln and the Wild West and all that, vulnerability in men was actually seen as a virtue. If you were giving a speech and you didn't cry and you didn't show strong emotion, people thought you're kind of fake. You're wooden. So we got into this place where men are very suppressed and repressed emotionally and emotionally stunted, and then their marriages are falling apart, and sometimes it affects our business too, because it's not a long-term business strategy. A lot of men I know burn out. They push on the pedal too hard, too often, so they don't listen to their body instinct. Those signals in their emotions are signals to them. They don't heed them till they have a health crisis, or they're supremely isolated and lonely, or their partner's walking out on them. So there's kind of a dark side, right? And men need something positive to look at. They need positive role models. They need examples of what wholeheartedness looks like.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if we're lucky, we get that through women in our life who model for us. But we also need men to model, so we can show up everywhere in our, in our wholeness. That was a lesson for me too in my 30s, is that I knew how to be vulnerable and feel stuff, but only around women. And then I had a few senseis, and I had a few men in my life who were like, wow, this man is powerful, generative, and he's crying. And it's beautiful. And I don't understand it. It's beguiling to me because I didn't grow up in that world. And now I'm in a place where I can hold that and model that for other men, and show them that when you're a little boy, for example, you're not emotionless. You don't suppress your emotions. Every mother knows that when she has a son, right? They come and cry to you on your shoulder, and then they brush themselves off and they go back into the fight. And all our emotions are beautiful if we understand them and know how to process them through our nervous system. When we hold on to them or suppress them, they turn against us. They cause us to get sick and act out and hurt people. So there's kind of a high stakes to it, for me, with men particularly. Like, we need to get our shit together. We need to reclaim our hearts, because look at the state of the world. It needs us to step up.
It's so interesting that you talk about having those role models, because that's been a component that I've noticed since Jonathan and I have kind of brought our skill sets together. Because before that, Jonathan was predominantly kind of in the fitness education space and leadership space, and I was doing a lot of the coaching. Well, I was doing the coaching, and so it was obviously me, female, with clients, but they didn't have that male dynamic there. And what I've noticed since we've both been coaching all of our clients, obviously in our own ways, it's been awesome, obviously, for the men to have both, but it's been really powerful for the women to see that a man has that ability and can connect with emotion, because they also, as I did, come from the world of men don't cry, men show up, provide, be the tough guy, and that's just such a distortion, and it does nobody any good to live in that paradigm. So that's been really powerful, I think, for our clients, but also I think for our relationship in many ways, because I've gotten to know the depths of John so much more when something comes through a session, or comes through just a conversation or a thought that's been provoked based on something that one of us has experienced with a client as well. And it's very, very powerful stuff, I think.
Well, I want to celebrate you as a couple, because to me, I just see a lot of couples, co-parents and partners, who polarize too much, who kind of villainize the other. He's too in his head and she's too crazy and emotional and impulsive, and they forget that you actually need both in each person, like yin and yang. But we are built differently. So if I am more cerebral, I do need to get into my heart. But when I get into my heart, I still have my brilliant mind that I've developed for decades, right? And if you can, like you're just describing the way you can appreciate each other, then you work in stereo, then you're dynamic as a couple, right? Then you're like, wow, they both have the full package, but when you put them together, it's just like, this is amplified, powerful force. There's also this idea, I think it was Robert Bly who talked about it, the idea of the third. When you're in a partnership, a couple particularly, but any genuine relationship, there's a third body, the presence of the relationship itself. Like you put yourself together and there's a garden between you that you both tend.
That would be wellness there.
Yeah. And you guys get it, right? And a lot of men, including me, didn't get it. I've been married 11 years, and for the first 8 years, I did not understand what a relationship actually was. I was still there as an individual, male conditioned, to think I'm here for being a decent person and receiving good stuff from my wife. And when we're arguing or not agreeing, then there's something wrong. I need to try to find it somewhere else. That's pretty messed up when you say it out loud, right?
Yeah.
But that's the condition. You fall in love, you meet this person, and if they don't make you happy, then you go somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's very individualistic, as opposed to understanding relationality, that we're here to co-create something bigger than both of us. And I have to tend that garden every day for it to thrive, for it to grow. And the other piece is the two of us can't actually do it alone. We need that village, that community around us. That's why when you get married or you have some kind of ceremony, you gather your people, not just as witnesses, but to say to them, we're going to need you, right? In isolation.
We did the opposite of that.
We went off to Vegas.
We eloped to Vegas.
But we had that later.
No, yeah, we had a little reception later.
But you have people you have people you lean on, right? You have people who yeah,
absolutely. But it's I think the important thing to realize, like, it's as a couple, in a man women in a relationship, it's I still doing the work on myself as a man.
Yeah.
To find that connection individually and as a couple, like it doesn't end. And I think that's the important thing. It's like we've had people looking like what you said, power couple, you guys are amazing. I see we still have our off days. We still have our days where we're tired or hungry, and we end up kind of being a conflict towards each other. We revert back to our old inner child. And I think people need to realize that's normal. I say you're not going to get to a point where everything's perfect and you're all balanced and zen for the rest of your life. Things are going to come up and they're going to challenge that. You're going to end up reverting back to old patterns of behavior where you might snap at your loved one, where you might get too much into your masculine energy, where you revert back into your old conditioning of keeping everything in and withdrawing, or the opposite. I think it's so important for people to remember is when you're becoming aware and you're doing this work on yourself, it's a constant life, everybody said never-ending improvement. It's a constant never-ending kind of journey from that. It's not just, okay, I've done all this work, I'm aware, I'm done, perfect, excellent. But no, it's a constant awareness. And we have times I know I have times I know exactly when it happens, but I'm tired when I'm hungry. That's when we go back and then something happens and you go, oh, okay, there's that inner child coming back out again. There's that old conditioning, those old patterns coming out. And I think the main thing for anyone to realize is it's just that bringing that level of awareness, is becoming aware of it is half the battle. Is know it's happened, you're aware of it, you know why it's happened, and you know how to flip the switch on it again.
And communicate. That's
communicate.
huge. Like John knows when to not
and when to
and me back, right? It's one of those things. It's like when somebody needs their space, you just feel it that somebody becomes more intuitive than anything else, but it takes time to get to that point. God, in the beginning when we were only obviously as a couple, but then working together, it was like
crazy times,
brutal. No, that is profoundly important, because you don't hear about that enough. And I've seen hundreds of men who say that to me. Oh my God, I saw you and your wife argue, and then you guys worked it out, and then we're back to good times. And how life-changing that was for them, because they'll look up to me or my wife, and because we have these fairy tale ideas of what a relationship should look like, then we abandon ship too early, or we throw up our hands. And part of it comes from we don't have the skills. Honestly, I didn't learn much from my parents. They're lovely people, but I didn't see how they repaired things, how they communicated well, right? So we have to kind of look around the world and pick up in pieces these things that we need to make it work. What you're saying though is so profound. I have two mentors who are a couple in their 70s, and we visit them, my wife and I, and they're our role models, because we all need role models, right? And they're so real. They have these moments, they don't hide it from their friends, and it's driving me crazy, Jerry, and Kim, but there's humor, there's love, there's always a repair that they get to. And that's the most powerful modeling, is not perfection, not look at us, we're happy all the time. They're real, and they show us a pathway to having a real relationship. I think the health, we talked about deep health last time. It's the same story, right? You're not always going to be feeling good. Sometimes you're going to get sick, and that's part of your health journey. And, to look at it, what are the things I need to tend to and take care of on a more holistic level, as opposed to a quick fix that fixes one problem, creates another. Marriage is a lot like that. Relationships are complex ecosystems. They need constant attending. And you're right. Sometimes the best thing to do is just step away from each other, lovingly reassuring each other, knowing you'll come back. It's a complex dance. And I've also found too, when you look out into the world, because I'm in the mental health world, when you look at like relationship science, there's different experts and they all have like pieces of it, but then they leave out other pieces. They all talk about the skills of communication, super important, but you also forget about the red flags or these other pieces, the emotional side of it. And so I've spent 12 years of my own marriage trying to figure out all those pieces, to be able to like understand what is it actually going to take to sustain our marriage and help us grow into our old age.
I bet your wife is loving that mission as well.
She is. She literally grows a garden where she mentors people, and it's the same journey, just in a very physical way, right? She's constantly like growing stuff and amazed, and then other things are being attacked by pests. There's weeds that strangle certain things. There's right now we have a groundhog, a fox, and raccoons that are eating our vegetables. There's always something, right? There's always something in life, in relationship, in health that eats away at you, or you have to kind of come to understand it, work with it somehow.
It's a lesson, isn't it?
Never-ending journey, like you said, right?
Isn't it amazing how it's all mirrored as well? Everywhere we look, it's all mirrored. If we would just pay attention and listen, it's incredible. David, I'd love to just take us back a step for our listeners, because we've talked about some really, really powerful things so far already, but I'd love to kind of get a little bit practical for anyone who's listening. And I would say men in particular, to begin with, if they're struggling to perhaps identify how they're feeling for themselves, or are struggling to actually express that emotion, what kind of advice or tips could you give for them?
Well, in the old version of me in my 30s would have given them resources and tools, pointed them to things they could do, right? And men particularly like to do something. But I've really come to believe that, when you talk about emotion, there's a field of emotion regulation. I don't like the word regulation, but let's call it emotion awareness, emotional mastery, awakening. It really happens in relationship. Where do I learn to process fear? Because somebody's there with me, modeling for me, saying, look, I'm terrified too. That's what warriors used to do, right? Like the Maori warriors of New Zealand, for example, they have a war dance where they express all of their terror, their emotion, because they know for us to be effective in battle, we need to feel terrified and walk through that terror. So they know they have this pathway, and they teach their younger men, this is part of life. It's fear. You have to master it. You have to embrace it. So I would recommend to them to look for men and women, but particularly men, if they can find them in their life that already exist, and to be surprised by who that could be. It could be your lawyer or dentist friend. You don't expect it, but who have that capacity to witness and hold and model for them the thing that's coming up for them, whether it's fear, anger, shame. Shame is the hardest one, and grief, and fear. I mentioned fear. Shame is a hard one, but there's always people in your life that already have passed through a threshold. They've been through something, and you can kind of sense it. They have like almost like a superpower. It's like, and I've been too scared to talk to them, but if you dare to share, it's a test, right? It's a bit risky to say to them, hey, I have something you might understand. And then they give you a signal saying, oh yeah, bring it. And then you open up a little bit, and then you see how they hold that, and if they hold that well, you open up a little more, and then all of a sudden you're sitting in a bar with a drink, and you're expressing all of it, and then you have this person who looks at you going, like what you did with your family member, going, wonderful, this is amazing, I fucking see you alive right now, and I'm celebrating your opening to me, and I can hold you, and you can trust me. That itself seems simple, but it's profound and transformative, more than any therapy or tools or techniques. To and there are people in our life who have that capacity. They're not always like waving a flag. Sometimes they're the quieter people, and sometimes you take that test and it bombs, right? You open up to a friend and they look at you like they're completely lost, and they're telling you to sweep that up and take it away because they can't handle it. And that's kind of sad, and you might feel rejection, but celebrate the courage you just had. You're breaking a pattern. You're trying to find allies in your life.
That's powerful. I mean, just having that courage, right, and building that courage to be able to open up to somebody, especially for a man, I can imagine that's probably tougher, a lot tougher. What would you say to somebody that's trying to build that courage?
Well, my friend Eric Pierney, who started Men Therapy Toronto, he understands male psychology because he works with thousands of men, right? And he said his thing that he says to every man who comes in, because a lot of men just kind of shop around, they're like, I don't know, believe in this therapy business or whatever. And the very first thing he says to them, he says, look, and he leans in and I like this, it's really true. He said, hundreds of years ago, if men wanted to prove their courage, they would grab a spear or a sword and they go into battle, or they go to hunt, and they might not come back. That's what courage looked like. Nowadays, courage looks like what you're doing right now. You're coming to meet someone, even a stranger, and you're daring to share something about your life. And that goes against all of your conditioning, all of your instinct, especially shame. Shame is that voice that says, don't talk about it. They're not going to understand. They're going to think you're weird. Like it's trying to protect you and make you hide. And that courage is that feeling of fear in your belly and your legs walking forward anyway. There's something more important than your shame or you think your reputation or looking good. It's more important that you get real with your life. And you're doing it for, I think the other piece is most courage comes from doing it for something higher, bigger, right? And often comes from doing it for other people, which I think is a beautiful thing. Like, I'm terrified to talk to you, but if I don't do this, my marriage might fall apart. So I'm going to suck up my male conditioned pride, and I'm going to bleed and sweat and puke on this carpet if that's what it takes. I love that. I love that kind of seeing men having that courage. I see that all the time. And often it just comes out of desperation, comes out of, and to be fair, I think men don't have spaces to do that enough. So it's not all on them, right? It's on the rest of us in life to notice men in our lives and say, hey, you seem isolated. You seem kind of withdrawn. What's going on? I'm here. No pressure. I'm here. When you're ready, call me. Let's go for a walk.
Do you think that's is that the kind of suggestion you'd then give to a woman to be able to give their man the space, or does it need to come man to man?
I think it's both, right? Like, it's you're absolutely right. Like, it comes, the signal men really love to get from a woman, whether it's their partner or sister or even mom, is to say, I see you're struggling. I can't be the only shoulder you cry on, or you're only confident and all that. And maybe I'm not even the best person to talk about, but I see you. And I know there's other allies in your life, and I can help you find them. I can nudge you. I can be one of those allies, but I think you need more. You need more allies. There's a story that an elder told me once. He said, when men, you know, in traditional cultures that are healthy, where they have to keep the village alive, if you're not healthy, the village dies. So the stakes are pretty high, right?
Mm.
And they would recognize that men, particularly at age 13 even, they're still boys. They needed to be initiated. And at different stages, men needed to be, and women too, but men particularly needed structure. Women tend to initiate themselves with each other. Men need someone to take them through it. So they would take them into like arduous, you know, nature or somewhere, and they would test them, and they make them stay out all alone for a week or two. And sometimes they didn't come back. The boys didn't come back, right?
Mm.
It was risky. And there's this one story where one of the men, young men, come back and he's just defeated. He failed the test. And but he's got that pride, and he's like, he's gonna go back in and do it again. And he does it like 7 or 8 times, and he's just like hitting his head against the wall. And the elders step in and they stop him and they said, no, you can't do this. And he's just beside himself, because it's like they don't believe in him. And he's like, what's going to change? If you're going to do this, what's going to change? And he didn't know. So they told him, they said, you know, the only way you can get through this obstacle, this threshold, is if you have more allies. Because that demon over there, those inner demons that you have, that you meet in those woods, they're bigger than you. So you need more allies. So you need to ask us to come with you, or, you know, like, and that, I think that's the psychology that as men, we need to start to embody, to go, oh, right, I've only gotten this far in life because I've tried to do it all alone. And that's only going to get me this far. But what if I had allies? What if I talked to my friend Charlotte? And what if I met other men and I just assembled this circle of amazing people? The truth is too that our psychology, we know this now, our psychology has been very individualistic, but we're starting to become relational. We're starting to study people in relationships, and we're realizing that the most powerful, the thing that shapes who we are as individuals is the people we spend time with. It's not just our mindset, our goals. That's like a little steering thing that we have a little bit of influence on our life, but the 5 people that you spend most time with shape who you become. And men don't think about that. Women do, right? But once men start to see that, they're like, of course, I hang out with people who are always, you know, picking on me or just are stuck. Well, I'm going to stay stuck. It's not going to change till I start finding new allies, or I start waking up the people around me and saying, I need you to step in with me and be more of a force for good. And that's a beautiful thing for men to challenge each other, saying, okay, enough chit chat about sports. Let's get real.
Yeah.
Are you up for being real with me? And sometimes the answer is no, I can't do this. I have no idea how.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get surprised, right? You like that friend has been waiting for you to call them in.
Yeah.
Because men love to be dared, right, Jonathan? Like, you love when someone comes to you and says, I want you to give me more.
Unless it's me.
Yeah, that's a Charlotte, and it's no. But,
no. Yeah.
It's so true, because if I was in a social situation with a group of people, and then there was something that terrified me, and so I said, okay, you're up next, you're doing, I wouldn't say no. I'd go, yeah, I'm doing it. Inside, I'd be like, holy shit. It's like, what's going on? I'm crapping myself here. But because I'm around other people, it's like, no, I'm doing it. I'm going to do this. Again, it's that ego coming in. It's like,
it's a good thing.
It can be good, because like, the amount of things I think I've done in my life where I've done out of that fear of not wanting to kind of look, well, look weak, quote unquote, which is obviously bullshit, but so I just thought, okay, I'm just going to do it regardless of how I feel. And I think that's, and even though the whole concept and the mindset around that is not really serving, but the lesson I took away from that, and what drives me forward in trying new things, is I do still feel that fear, that scared, but I do it anyway. And I think that's what's kind of that part of that took away. That's what served me, I think, because I will do majority of things within reason, obviously, but I'll do majority of things, even if it scares me, even if I feel scared to do it or afraid to do it, I would just go and do it anyway.
So would you
Yeah.
would you admit
But I would not
that
admit
you're
I was scared.
Yeah.
So that's the
Well,
work.
But now I would. Now I
Yeah.
would, but then
Well,
I wouldn't.
see, I think that's beautiful. That's a beautiful example of how we evolve, right? The ego isn't a bad thing. It's just needs to evolve from that place of I'm trying to prove myself to a place of I'm going to still do this because I'm being dared, but now I can do it authentically. I can say, look, I'm terrified, but I'm doing it anyway.
Exactly.
That's powerful. That encourages that gives me chills. That makes me go, wow, Jonathan has the courage to step up there, even though he's scared. Maybe I'll try it too. Because a moment ago I was going to say, no, I'm not going up.
Yeah.
But I look at him and I go, wow, I see his realness. I can relate to that fear. And also I see courage. It encourages me, right? I think there's one more piece to this that it sounds like a bit of a hack, but it's when men are asked to help, that's a really powerful thing. I have a few men in my life who kind of are in the trenches, you know, fighting for their marriage or struggling with their health. They're going through surgeries and such. And it's enormous for them to ask for help. So I always celebrate them and weep with joy when they reach out. But it's also powerful to say to them, hey, I need your help. I know you're struggling. Do you think you could be there for me for a few minutes? Do you think you could check in on me every week? And it could be it doesn't have to be this big, deep, soulful, emotional thing, because a lot of men don't know how to do that. It could be an accountability buddy. Hey, I'm having lots of fights with my wife. I just need to like check myself and step out and repair more. Can I just check in with you about every week about how that's going? And you just help me stay accountable. That's my mission. Can you help remind me of my mission when I text you or call you every week? Will you be that guy who stands with me, you know, on the battlefield? And I have never met a man yet who says no to that. And it's kind of a sneaky hack, because by them doing that for you, they go, whoa, look at him transforming himself. And I'm there, part of it, supporting him, not even doing that much, but maybe I can do that. A lot of those accountability relationships become more reciprocal naturally, right? Then the other guy starts saying, you know, I've been wanting to lose some weight, but I just want to start drinking more water every day. Can you remind me of that? Or not remind me, but can you check in with me about that? And that's when it gets really beautiful, is when you have these kinds of alliances, pacts with men and women, where you check in on each other, you support each other. You know, it's a very simple thing to do, but we're not used to doing that in our culture again, right? We're used to thinking, I have to figure it all out myself. I have to read 25 books and have the answers, or go to see the expert. But that's way more powerful, is to have these allies. Yeah,
that's so relevant for women as well. So anybody listening here, like, that is crucial. I was very much would I still be a wolf? A lone wolf as a female? But yeah, like, I was very much that way, especially when it comes to being vulnerable myself as well. And it is having those allies and people that you know you can call on, and it's super powerful. But I like the sort of sneaky in from a man's point of view, because for women it's like you can just say, right, listen, I'm not feeling good, like, we need to talk, kind of thing. But for guys, I know it's not that easy.
Oh God, no. I never used to ask for help ever. It's like, no, I can figure it out, I'll do it myself. And then things weren't getting better. No, I'll keep doing it myself. Eventually something's got to change. Doing the same old stuff, you know, the whole definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. But now, like, again, with the right person, I feel more than comfortable asking for help, and reaching out, because it's not, as asking for help is probably one of the ultimate signs of strength, whereas it's been seen as a weakness, because like you said, no one can do anything on their own. No one can achieve and be successful on their own. No one can get to where they want to be on their own. It's all a community, like a communal type of effect. It's, you need help. You need that support system. You need that network around you to help, to guide you. And if you look at anyone out there, anyone who's been successful in anything, and ask them, so how did you do it? None of them will ever say I've done it on my own. It's all to do with me. No one helped me. Bullshit, because you can't.
Yeah.
If anybody tries to, they crash and burn, and just feel again they go down those depressive routes, just burning out, feeling, oh my god, what's the point of life? And like nothing's working for me. It's all about things are happening to me instead of for me. Type of that victim mentality. But when we start to get out of that and start to realize that, okay, I can ask for help. I can be vulnerable. That actually helps me grow because I'm stronger for it. And I think that's when that old school mentality of men and asking for help will start to go out the window. And it's already starting to do that. It's like compared to when I was growing up as a kid, like I don't think I ever saw any men be vulnerable. Like my dads, my granddad, my uncles, anyone I used to know from a male sense, never saw any of them cry, be vulnerable. It was always anger, sarcasm, and just kind of joking around. That was pretty much all they expressed, really.
Yeah. You're so on the point, Jonathan. I think it comes to leadership too, right? If we see our politicians say to us, hey, we're in a climate emergency, and there's a economic inequality that's destroying our fabric of our society, and we need you to step up and help. I can't do this alone. I don't have, even with all my power. We respect that. We might not agree with the analysis and all of that stuff, but we respect that. We know that that's strength. And you know, that whole idea of the lone wolf as being a virtuous thing. There's a guy who studied wolves, and he came up with that term. And alpha wolf. This kind of goes in male culture. This idea of an alpha. There's millions of men who are desperate, lonely, and don't have guidance, who actually believe these crazy ideas that you have to put on fake confidence and trick women into bed and do all this stuff. And even in their 30s and 40s, they still have this psychology of this. And they don't understand. When you study, the guy who studied the alpha male and alpha female of species, and it was in primates and wolves and different packs, they're the most relational. They're not the biggest, they're not the strongest. They're the ones who know what everybody else needs and how to take care of the village, right? They're the good communicators. They're the ones, when a battle starts coming up, they get in there and they start, bringing it down. And they're the ones who are vulnerable and real and saying, look, we're hungry. We need to move. We need to get food elsewhere. Come on, let's go. They're the authentic leader. So primates understand this.
We just need to catch up.
It's instinct. No, but the beauty is it's so instinctual that when we actually see it, we recognize it and go, yeah, there's something deep in our nervous system says, I trust you more. Even though that other guy has been telling me a load of shit that sounds good and makes me passive and not worry about things, I recognize what you're telling me is more real and I trust you more. And that gets into the marriage, into other places in life, but it hits on that leadership note. I
just think as human race, we're so obsessed with evolution and evolving and becoming better and smarter and stronger, we completely forgot to keep our connection to our instincts, to our foundation, and we completely lost touch and connection with those instincts. And I think what happens is people lose complete touch with themselves and connection with themselves, and really understanding what it is that they need, not just to function in this world, but in a relationship, in a community. I think it's getting back to those instincts and remembering again what we've forgotten.
Right on. Yeah, I couldn't say it any better.
David, in your book, the main character is Bill, right? You said Bill. Yeah. So do we get to learn how Bill moves through his challenges?
Oh yeah, yeah. And what I love about the story is that there's no one thing. There's like, I threw everything in there. 46 years, I threw Aikido, things I learned in the world of drama and therapy, and every known resource and wisdom I had, I threw in the book through a different character. So different characters embody. There's a nature mentor, you know, there's body healers in it, and they all meet him in different ways. And then you're seeing it through his eyes as a skeptic, as a rational, you know, business guy whose life is broken down, and then he encounters these different people, and you hear his thoughts and his reactions, and then he goes through it, and then he experiences it. And that's a joy for me, because every time I pick it up, I read a piece of it, and I'm like, oh, there's that part of all of us, right, who doesn't believe or who doesn't trust, doesn't understand intellectually what's always happening. But then there's the instinctual self that knows I'm in the right place. I need to see what's here, and is willing to take a little risk and another little risk. And so all the changes that happen over the 7 days there's like maybe like 13 or 14 climaxes within the story. I remember reading The Horse Whisperer, and what I love about that book and story is that there isn't just this big long buildup like a lot of stories. There's always like bad stuff, and then there's some breakthrough at the end. That's not real life.
Yeah.
That's unsustainable. So in The Horse Whisperer, there's just several key transformative moments. And in this story, it's the same thing that happens to Bill, right? He chooses to show up these different places, and then it changes him. And then he continues, and he has another breakthrough and another breakthrough. That over 7 days, he goes through an incredible journey. You know, that might seem kind of unrealistic and crazy, but if you were to hang out with all these people over 7 days, you would be a different person at the end. You know, you'd be in a different place. I mean, so that was a joy for me to write that, a story that is more true to what I've seen, right?
Yeah.
And what we said earlier too, life is a process. We're always revisiting these old parts of ourselves, having the same dance, but we get to do it a little bit better, a little more grace and humor each time. And oh, we're having that fight again. Well, okay, we learned a little bit last time. Let's apply it. Let's work through it a little bit better. Yeah, that's the part that's really satisfying to me with the book. And that's why I'm giving away free copies of the ebook, because I just want people to experience a nourishing story that's based on real things that have happened to me and other men. There's stuff like one of the characters goes into a coma, and there's stuff like you go, oh, this is crazy, but that actually happened to my friend. He was in a coma for 6 months.
Wow.
And he's a thriving dad now, and he finished his PhD. But that happens. That, like, life is kind of crazy, right? There's stuff that happens to us that you think is unbelievable, and it happens to us all the time. We have crises all the time, and again, we don't talk to each other about it. There's such a closed stoicism in our culture that if people start telling each other what was really going on, they would be like, I don't need to watch TV. Your life is insane. You're crazy. Like, you're going through what? And we would realize, like, wow, we need to be there for each other.
Yeah. And it gives so much perspective as well, even though, for example, you know, in the book, it's your friend being in the coma. There'll be something, probably in our own lives that we'll be able to relate to, even if it's not that specifically. As a story, we'll be able to buy into what's behind it, right? And I think that's so powerful, because it connects, right? And I think that sounds like the power of your book is that it builds that connection with the reader and their own personal human experience. And from there, I think everybody will have their own unique transformations. Did you have any specific kind of transformations in mind, like the experience that you wanted the reader to have outside of nourishment?
Well, Bill and his wife kind of start the story at a point where she gives him an ultimatum. And I've been there in my relationship. And it's a terrifying place to be when if you're on the receiving end, or if you're the one who's giving the ultimatum, because it's like the whole ground underneath your feet is ripped open, right? Are we going to survive? Are we going to make it? And so I wanted to find a way as a storyteller to show how they heal that rift. And it took several different moments in the book that they have. It wasn't like one breakthrough. There was a moment where they had to fight. There was a moment where they had to have beautiful sex. There was a moment where they had to have several moments to get to a place where going, okay, we can do this together. And I think that the one piece that I was really proud of is how he encounters shame, that sort of sticky voice inside that corrupts our sense of self. All the other emotions you can kind of identify with, but you can kind of shake it off when it's over. But shame tends to linger, and shame tends to corrode our spirit. And I'm really proud that in the story, there's ways that Bill confronts his shame and sees beyond it, and can see his wife beyond her shame, and they get to a place where they, for the first time, they really see each other beyond who they're trying to be and how they're trying to be to each other. They see their realness, their vulnerability, their spirit, and their strengths. That part is really moving to me. Every time I read that, I just start crying. Beautiful. Because not every couple experiences that, to see each other as you really are. You guys spoke earlier about your relationship, and I think most couples go through that honeymoon, and then at some point you go through a rocky fighting phase, right? Storming phase, they call it. Not a lot of people make it. The odds aren't actually that good. It's less than half. And the half who stick around, half of those don't actually stick around for the right reason. They suffer together. So it's like a quarter or less of couples actually find a way through that tumultuous time where the ground is shaking, and I don't know if I love you anymore, and can I really trust you, and who are you, and you're not who I thought you were. But to get to past all of their emotions to the truth of, this is who you really are, this is who I really am, do we choose each other again? That to me is really beautiful. And it took Bill all of the mentors and community for him, like 2/3 of the way through the book, to get to a place like that. So I'm really proud of that, because I see that in my work happening.
That's really, really powerful. It's interesting what you said there, like those phases in a relationship as well. I think if you can get past those phases, a whole new level of depth comes up, of support, of vulnerability. I think when you get past those stages, and for us, it's like we've then both had our own individual crises, if you like, that we go through, but then we're so much more able to support each other because we know that it's a safe space to do so. So that's a crazy statistic, really, when you think about it, that most people don't get to that point. So what is the quality of those relationships? And our relationship is by no means perfect, but it saddens me, because like I want people to experience that level of depth and connection and vulnerability and power that comes from that.
I think a big problem though is, again, the reason I think that statistic is so high is because people equate what happens in a relationship to love. It's like, oh, if you're fighting, you don't love me, or if we're at each other's throats all the time, you don't love me, because they're seeing love as a thing as opposed to an unconditional experience. You can still love someone and fight with them. You can still love someone and not want to talk to them. Okay, it's happened. We know that. We've done it. But love is not. If you start attaching love to a condition, that's where the problems start to happen. Oh, he doesn't love me because he shouted at me, or didn't do this for me. She doesn't love me because she keeps nagging, or whatever. It's like, come on, we've got to get past this whole concept of putting conditions on things, not just love, but everything. Get past that sense of condition. If you're with someone, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a family member, get rid of all expectations and conditions and just be, and then see what happens.
To bring just another, I guess, a layer of compassion to that. It's so easy for us to see it from this side of the fence now, right? But we've been there. We've been on that side of the fence, right? And I think, and this kind of goes back to like a bit of a cliche, but like when we learn to have a certain relationship with ourselves, then it's so much easier to be able to open up and see love for what it really is, right? Because often, unfortunately, you know, we move into relationships to fill some kind of void. And that's one of the things I liked about what you said earlier is that, you know, as individuals, you can both be awesome and powerful, and then together it creates something else. And as cliche as it sounds, if we can really figure out the relationship within ourselves first, or at least alongside a supportive partner, it would be super powerful. That's my word of choice for today's episode.
Yeah, it's a paradox, right?
Yeah.
It's like for a garden to be thriving, both gardeners need to show up and have their own relationship with the garden and be functional. You can't just kind of ignore it for a week or two. It dies.
No.
I mean, that's one of the statistics that is terrifying, is that relationships don't just die because people have an affair and they can't work it out, or some dramatic, they're fighting and they're kind of that's part of it sometimes, but more common is actually people who are nice to each other, who avoid conflict, who always try to get along.
Yeah. It
implodes slowly. 5 years later, all of a sudden one of them is just walking out and you don't even know why.
Yeah.
That's the terrifying part, is like, that's the neglect, right? We didn't get real with each other. We didn't risk the fight and me being messy and spitting out what I'm really feeling because I'm playing nice, and to be compassionate and fair. These are all things we learn in childhood. We watch our parents do their dance and we mimic them because that's all we know.
Yeah.
Oh, we have to be nice in this family. Oh, we just deflect everything with sarcasm. That's how we do it. That's what when we're in a relationship, that's what we revert to.
Yeah.
So again, to me, it comes back to, we need role models, we need community, we need people in our lives like Jonathan, what you said earlier, who say to us, hey, you're having a fight with your wife. Hey man, that's so normal. Oh, I just had a fight last night with mine. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what expectations are you holding that are making this feel like you have to walk out instead of just accepting it. That's part of the ebbs and flows, right? The natural, and conflict is a real beautiful tool for growth. It tells you that you and your partner are different, and you can learn to flow with that difference and accept each other more, or you can try to beat each other up. But conflict is natural, necessary, right? We need people in our life who say that to our face and who reassure us and say, you can get through this, and I'll be there for you when you have another fight, and we can talk about it and debrief. And I think that's the piece that, if there's one takeaway I'd love for people to have from this conversation, or from me, or from the book, is that we need each other, and we all have things to give each other that help our relationships, that help our parenting, that help our health, and to trust that more, as our society seems to be fraying at the edges, right?
Yeah, and it starts there, right? And then it will have a ripple effect in society. The more we can do that, connecting one-to-one, or one-to-many, it just grows and grows and grows. So David, thank you so much for today's conversation. I absolutely loved it, as always. It's always a pleasure speaking to you. Can you let our listeners and us know where we can get a copy
Exactly.
of your
We
book?
want that book.
Yeah. So you can get the book. Here it is again, at www.powerfulandloving.com/muscle. I'm giving the book away as an ebook, and you can just download it directly. And my hope in exchange for the free gift is that you give an honest review. That's all. Even if it's critical. I love critical reviews.
I feel like I want to give you a critical one now, just because you really want one. But I think that's a hard push to find.
Because there was one guy who loved the book. It made him cry 10 times, and then he threw in a criticism, and I was like, beautiful. So it challenged him. It wasn't all. It wasn't like one of those reads that you just pacifies you. It woke him up.
Yeah. Nice.
Amazing.
Well, we'll be downloading that as soon as we
Absolutely.
finish this
I'll put-
recording.
Yeah, definitely. We'll put all the links obviously in
Thanks,
the
guys.
notes, the show notes for that, so people can obviously go and find that book as well.
Yeah, and when does it come out officially? Because anybody's downloading it for free, wouldn't it be amazing if they then gifted a copy to somebody else when it comes out?
Yeah.
So when does it come out?
I'm hoping to release it in probably by October, November. It'll all be on the website. I think I'll keep the free ebook copy there
Cool.
for a while so people can
Yeah.
find it. It is nice to have the paper copy.
Yeah.
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 So I'll let you
Lovely.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, with paper copy and a highlighter is usually the
I
way
will-
for a novel.
You
Maybe
know what?
not.
I will send you a paper copy.
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah,
even
I have the
better.
pre-read. So yeah.
there is nothing Charlotte likes better than receiving books.
that's like
It's wonderful, eh?
that's my love language.
Yeah.
Me too. I love it.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Thank you so
Thank you
much,
so- yeah,
David.
thank you,
As
David.
always,
You're
like I
welcome.
said, it's always a pleasure. So many nuggets of wisdom. No doubt we will listen to this as well. And yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, and for sharing your gift of authorship to the world.
Thank you. I just feel so much joy. What a beautiful way to start my day. And I love all of the questions and things that you guys shared. It's so rich and poignant. Life is
Thank you.
really beautiful, right? And rich and complex and challenging. To be able to share it with you is what a gift. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much.